85-cent beer can, broken beer bottle. It costs more than just the amount of money you put on the counter when you buy out. It cost 4 people their lives last night simply because somebody decided they want to drink and drive.
He's a 19-year veteran state trooper who's brought his message of safety awareness to over 6.5 million people across the country. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome Lieutenant Pete Collins.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. I have 2 policies when I talk. Number 1, when you talk, I wouldn't dare talk because that would be rude. And when I talk, I'm not going to expect you to talk. You get my drift? But you see, everywhere I go, folks will say, "Trooper, what is this?" A lot of folks call it a blackjack, but it's really not. It's called a crowd control device. And the reason you call it a crowd control device is that you can hold it in your little hand and control a crowd. The way you control a crowd is that you can hit him. Now, I can talk all day about how it works, but let me just sort of show you. How about you? Me? Yeah, you. Would you come help me, please? Good deal. Hi.
Hi.
I'm Lieutenant Pete Collins.
Neil Hoppy.
Neil?
Yes, sir.
Good to see you. Always remember, gang, when you shake hands with someone, look them straight in the eye and shake their hand. Always remember also that when you lose control of your life, then you no longer have the right to make decisions that would be best for you. You see, I work out on the highway every day, and I use this to try to show you that once you lose control, you're gone. I can take this little $6 or $7 stick, and I can hit him right here, close both of his eyes. I can hit him here, knock his teeth out. Or I can hit him here and burst his spleen. I can hit him here and tear his intestines loose. I can hit...
I don't even think so.
I was going to hit him on the knee.
Yeah, sure.
But you see, I can take this little $6 or $7 stick, and I can hit him right here and kill him. Now, this doesn't cost much, but if it's used improperly, it'll cost you your life. But if I can control an individual with it right here, I win. If I can't, I'll reach and grab these. Now, I know you already know what these are because you watch television. But these are not handcuffs. These are called restraining devices. You see, they can fit big old wrists and little bitty wrists. They'll fit all sizes. All I've got to do, though, to control this young man is not put them around his wrist. I can run this up in his nose. And he'll follow me like a wrecker all the way down the highway. But if I want to control him, all I've got to do is just reach and grab this finger, slide it around and put pressure. Now, this young man will do anything I tell him to do now because I have control of his life. If you don't believe it, watch. Son, get on your knees.
No.
Now, don't make me look bad in front of all these folks. Get down on your knees, son.
No.
You see, he's hard-headed. He already knows. But you see, folks, I'm fixing to take control of his life. All I've got to do is just put pressure right here, and he'll do anything I tell him to do. You don't believe it? Watch, son. Get on your knees. Oh. Have we got him, folks? Give him a hand for that, huh? Now, if you don't believe I can control him, how many of you here would like to see him kiss an old freckle-faced trooper? How about that? Would you like to see that, folks? Okay, son, kiss me.
No.
Wait a minute now. That's one time. Let's ask him nice again. Please kiss me.
Thanks.
That's 2 times. But gang, listen. What happens when he loses control of his life? He'd rather do anything than to kiss an old state trooper, but I'm going to take control of his life. Come here to me, son. Get a little closer. You're going to kiss me, put your arms around me. Give him a big hand, gang. Thank you. You see, young people, I'm fixing to talk to you for the next few moments about something that's going to hold your life tighter than these handcuffs could ever hold you. Every time you turn television on, every time you watch a sporting event or some program, some big athlete's going to walk up on television and they're going to say, let's drink. Let's have a party. They've even learned, folks, how to dress up a dog. They can put tennis shoes on him and little sunglasses, and they call him a party participant. But you see, after 19 years of riding up and down the highways of my state, I've never seen the party animal at a funeral home. Now, everywhere I go, when I make this statement, I have various and sundry reactions. But ladies and gentlemen, just as sure as God made little green apples, from the corner of this room right here to the corner over here, someone I'm talking to today will never get to finish high school. You're going to die in a car wreck. The reason why that I'm standing here is that I've watched enough of you die to last me 1,000,000 years. I know exactly what it's like to walk up on your mother and dad's door. I know what it's like to listen to your mother and dad scream. I've watched enough of your mothers tear the buttons off of this uniform. I've watched enough of your dads reach up and take your picture off the wall and hold it to their breast until my job's not fun to me anymore. I'm holding in my hand America's #1 drug problem, alcohol. Now, I didn't buy this can of beer in the store. I picked it up on the side of a highway where I work every day. Every time you watch television, they tell you about partying. If you party with alcohol, young people, you party in a group. But if you die with it, you die all alone, all by yourself. And just as sure, listen to me, 15 seconds after they close the lid on you at your local funeral home, everybody at your high school starts to forget your name. I went to a high school in your neighboring state. I walked out on the stage and I said, hey gang, from the corner of this room to the corner over here, someone I'm talking to right now is never going to get to finish high school. Fellas, some of the senior boys stood up and booed me because while I was on the stage talking about drinking and driving, they were planning a keg party that night, all you can drink, $3 a head. I walked off of that stage. I went back to my state and started being a trooper like I do every day. 3 weeks later, a little girl sent me a letter and she said, Dear Lieutenant Collins, this is the hardest letter I've ever tried to write. I owe you an apology. She said, when you walked on our stage and said that one of us wouldn't graduate, I laughed at you, but I'm not laughing now. She said, you'll remember him. He was the young man who introduced you, our senior class president. Mr. Everything, quarterback on our football team, first baseman on our baseball team, played forward on our basketball team, ran the mile on our track team. He was the kind of guy that every girl would just do backflips to go with. She said, Lieutenant, he was killed coming home from our senior party that night, drunk. Not only did he kill himself, he killed his little girlfriend, the junior class president. Not only did he kill her, but the young man that played tackle with him on the football team killed him. The young lady he was dating shall forever be 15 years old, paralyzed from her neck down, in a state of disrepair. Every time she tries to dress, she will dream what it was like to put her trousers on, a blouse on, while someone else was dressing her. from the day that this accident happened until she dies, she will never know the joy of scratching her leg. She said, Mr. Collins, there are things worse than death. You see, young people, when I was your age, my mother was the stupidest woman in the whole world. My mother couldn't find her ears with both hands. But as I got a little older, my mother got a lot smarter. The reason why that I'm standing here today, I got to tell you folks, I watched enough dying to last me forever. One Christmas Eve, I pulled out of the driveway and my wife hollered just as I walked out the door. My wife said, honey, you come in late tonight and I'm going to whoop you. Santa Claus is coming in the morning. Please come in early so we can have some time together. I promised her faithfully that I'd come in early. I started out at 2 o'clock Christmas Eve. Before I realized that it was 2 o'clock Christmas morning. I was so sleepy I smelled covers as I pulled into my driveway. I got out of my patrol car and I looked up. The stars were twinkling across the sky. I looked through my living room window and I could see the Christmas lights blinking off and on. I walked into the house and my son was asleep on the couch. I walked over and turned the television off and unplugged the Christmas tree lights. He stood up in the floor and doubled up his fist and said, don't fool with me, old man, I'll clip you. I said, you still can't whoop your daddy, boy. He walked over and put his arms around me and said, I love you, Dad. I said, you only love me twice a year. He said, yeah, on my birthday and Christmas. I watched him as he walked back through the house, and I walked over, and fellas, just as I started pulling these old black boots off, the phone rang. I answered it, and it was a dispatcher. She said, Pete, you need to get back in the car. You got a pretty bad wreck over at Hardin Hill. I said, I've been working almost 18 hours. Don't y'all have somebody else to send? She said, Pete, you know we don't have anybody else to send. I hung up and started putting my boots back on. My wife raised up and said, baby, do you have to go back out? And I said, honey, it's a pretty bad wreck over at Hardin. She said, I hope it's not too bad. It's Christmas. Ladies and gentlemen, I kicked that big old Ford patrol car and I started over the pine-covered hills of my state. Just as I topped the hill at Hardin, I could see the fog had started settling on the side of the roadway. An old flashing light, barely blinking, the battery's almost gone in an old pickup truck. I slid up, and before my left foot could ever hit the ground, an old man with a pair of rubber boots on and a pair of overalls, he came walking across the highway, and he said, come here quick, trooper. I believe somebody's still alive in this car right here. I ran over with my light, and as soon as I looked down, I knew that the driver was dead. His body was out of the car, and his body was covered in gasoline and oil and Christmas presents and food, clothing. I looked back at this old fella to ask him what made him think somebody was still alive. And it's as if he read my mind. He said, listen, trooper. Well, back over in the midst of that broken, twisted automobile, ladies and gentlemen, was something that this old freckle-faced state trooper's never gotten used to. It was a little girl. And she was calling for her mother. She was saying, Mama, Mama. Well, folks, all I could think about was mine. I started running around that car, trying to figure out how I could get in it. The roof was crushed in. I got up to the front with my light, and I looked, the windshield was gone. I started crawling in like a snake. Finally, the passageway became so small that I had to put my light down and just start reaching and feeling. I got up to her mother's body, and she was blocking. I could go no further. I remember one time, girls, I reached over her mother's body. I'm feeling for this little voice, and I remember one time I put my hand in a pimento cheese sandwich, just feeling. All of a sudden, a little hand grabbed those 3 fingers and said, Mama, Mama. I got her by her wrist and then by her elbow, and I tried to pull her back through a hole that, fellas, wasn't as big as a basketball, maybe a little bigger than a volleyball. But it didn't matter how I pulled her, she wouldn't fit. Now she realizes that I'm not her mother, and she's frightened and she's scared. And she starts fighting me, and I'm saying, Pumpkin, don't fight me. Come right through here. I'll get you out. Gang, I still have the scars on my forearm where she bit into my flesh trying to make me let her go. That's not play acting, gang. That's real. About that time, that old man with the rubber boots grabbed me by the leg, started pulling me back across the highway. I can still feel the glass from the broken windshield cutting into my stomach as he slid me back across. I said, Mr. Ferguson, she's just right here. He said, oh, trooper, you can't stay in this car. It's burning. That's why I talk against drinking and driving. Because every time I see a beer commercial on television, ladies and gentlemen, every time the big sports figure stands up and talks about drinking, I realize that the majority of the folks that's going to drink is going to drive. And every time I see him say, let's party, I can still see those orange flames shooting up toward the starry skies. Every time they walk the dog across the stage and talk about the party animal, I can still hear that little girl screaming in my ears. Ladies and gentlemen, there's more to beer advertisement than the good times. What I'm telling you, gang, you can die out here on this highway, and the quickest way to die is to think you're going to live forever. But I guess, young people, if you really want to know why I'm here, I got to tell you. The reason why that I'm standing in this spot right now was a little old bitty girl that I found in a green Toyota Corolla that's changed my life forever. They've resurfaced the highway now. All the skid marks and the gouge marks, well, they're all gone. The grass has started to grow back on the side of the interstate where the antifreeze and the oil, the gasoline had killed it. But underneath the resurfaced road and the green grass that's now growing, there's a scar that's affected me forever. It was a Friday evening football night. The sun had already started going down behind the waving pine trees in the wind. When the radio starts to blare that they've got a bad accident down on Highway 35, well, I kicked that big old forward patrol car, fellas. It just sort of jumped up in the front, and I started down those hills up and down. I didn't worry because I was a state trooper. I'd been trained to handle this. I knew how to put on bandages. I knew how to straighten out broken limbs. I'd been trained. Well, when I topped the hill, something happened that I was really not prepared for. You see, they'd trained me to do everything in the world that a person could possibly be trained to do, except how to watch you die. I'm not very good at that. And after 19 years, I still don't think I'll ever get used to it. Why, there was 3 children in a green Toyota Corolla. Randall was 17. Glenda was 14. They were on the front seat. And Patricia, why, she was on the back seat on the passenger side. Oh, I remember, fellas, she had on a pair of corduroy blue jeans, square pockets. She had 2 $1 bills stuck right here. She had a red flannel shirt on and bright red lipstick, and her fingernails were painted to match. I remember that she had a gold class ring dangling around her neck from a gold chain. Why, her boyfriend played center on the football team, and they had a little fuss that afternoon. And hey, fellas, you know the best way to make up in a fuss, you just sort of go and hold each other. They started to the football game. I don't know what these kids were talking about. I guess no one ever will. But I do know that an eyewitness said that two brothers were drag racing. They were trying to see whose pickup would outrun the other. They were coming north on this highway at 100 miles an hour, side by side. This eyewitness said that Randall saw this pickup coming. He had gotten 13 inches off of the pavement trying to miss him. This drunk hit him head on. The witness said that the impact was so gigantic that it knocked this little green Toyota up in the air, spun it around. When I got there, there were people, glass, all over the highway. I ran up to a lady that was lying crossways of the center line. She was passenger in the pickup. She said, "Trooper, we're all right, but you better go look in that little green car right over there." Fellas, I grabbed my light and I ran over and I passed a green and white Ford pickup. Now, the driver has one little scratch right here. Didn't even have to have stitches. And fellas, he's cursing, trying to crank his truck and drive away. He doesn't even know he's had a wreck. But listen to what you don't see on television. Right over in this little old green car is what's left of a man and his wife's whole world. I ran over, and as soon as I looked in, I knew whoever it was. I found out later that it was the young boy and girl on the front seat. They were dead. Their bodies were crushed. But right back in the back corner was a little old bitty 15-year-old girl that changed my life forever. I remember she had glass in her hair, and every time that old blue light on top of my patrol car would flash, it would illuminate the interior of that car, and her hair would twinkle like a Christmas tree. I climbed in and pulled the stuffing from the roof away from her face. I reached and took my handkerchief and I wiped the glass and the tears off of her eyes so she could see. I remember one time I smeared her lipstick like a clown's smile. She looked up at me and that little bottom lip started to quiver. She said, "Mister, what happened?" I said, "Baby, you had a little problem, but be real still. I'll get you out." She said, "Where's my Bubba?" I said, "Baby, be real still. I'll get you out." I couldn't tell her brother was dead. I reached down to pick her up, and when I did, I realized that from her waist down, she was pinned and I couldn't move her. And I knew I had to go get some help for the jaws of life to come and cut that little green car apart. Just as I started to pull away, she changed me forever. She reached up and she grabbed me on that patch. It says State Trooper. And she said, "Mister, where are you going?" I said, "Baby, I'm not going to leave you. I'm going to run over here and get us some help. I'm coming right back." She said, "I'm sort of scared." I said, "Baby, please don't be afraid. I'm going to get you out. I do this every day for a living. I'll never forget if God lets me live to be a million." I pulled her hand loose, and just as I pulled her hand loose, I wrapped it around that old gold clash ring that was hanging. And I said, "Baby, hold on to that clash ring till I get back. That'll bring you some strength." I pulled away from her, and she said, "Mister?" I said, "What, baby girl?" She said, "Mister, I'm not fixing to die, am I?" I said, "Baby, I won't let you die." She said, promise me? I said, I promise. Across my heart. Smile came across those beautiful red lips, and she said, okay, if you promise. Ladies and gentlemen, when I came back, those big old beautiful eyes were staring off into space. I didn't get a chance to keep my promise. And not the first big football player or basketball player that walks up on television and says, let's party, was standing there saying, here, trooper, we can get her out. It seemed like forever before they came and cut that little old green car apart. I reached in and picked her up. As I can still see her broken, twisted legs as I pulled her back across the side of that little old green car. I placed her on the side of the highway, and I felt for some type of identification. Hey, fellas, all I could find was 2 $1 bills stuck right here. I turned around and I said, does anybody here know who these kids are? When a man with one little old scratch behind his right eye staggered out of the shadows, and he looked at me and he said, hell, trooper, I don't know who they are. They just ran over me. But they don't show you that on television. But this is a part I hope that you can understand this morning. I walked over and cranked up my patrol car, and I drove 3.8 miles up an old highway. I pulled off the roadway, and there was an automobile under the garage and a tire hanging on a rope that these children played on. Over here was a basketball goal, the rim bent down where these young people had tried to duck the basketball. I walked up on the porch, a big old black dog walked over and brushed his leg up against mine as if he knew why I was there. Hey, fellas, my heart was pumping. I could hardly breathe. Now, it wasn't my first time to knock on the door, but I've never knocked on the door and told a mother and dad that every dream they had in the world was gone. I could see the man through the curtain. He was drinking a glass of tea, watching television. His wife was crocheting. She looked around as I knocked on the door. Her husband got up, he put his tea on the counter, and he walked to the back door and he opened it and turned the porch light on. He saw me there in my uniform and he said, hey, trooper, come on in. Mama, get up and fix this boy something to eat. Son, have you had anything to eat? But you see, ladies, you'll understand, mamas can see 1,000,000 miles. I watched her hands start to tremble as she stood up. She looked at me and she said, son, which one of my babies are hurt? I said, all 3. She said, is it bad? I said, yes, ma'am. Are they not coming back? No, ma'am. Wait a minute, wait. That's not over. You see, that's one of the tragedies of the world today. You think when it happens, it's over. But listen, gang, it's never over. What do you do? You go down the next day and you pick out a box. Oh, they fix a nice suit for you. Tragedy? Yes, it is. Heartache? Sure it is. But let me tell you what happens. I'm standing there. We were such a massive crowd. They had to have their funeral in a high school gymnasium. And it was flowers all along the walls, and the family and friends came in, and all of the young people that, just yesterday, they went to school together, and now they're going to bury them. And the preacher stands up and he says, you know, we ought to do something about drunks. And everybody says, amen. Someone will stand up and say, you know, these were beautiful children. Amen. And then they put them in a long black Cadillac. And they take them down an old dusty gravel road where someone has dug a hole with a long-handled shovel. And then they cover them up and put the pretty flowers on, and everybody leaves. And I'm standing there, gang, with the wind blowing through the flowers, and I asked, does anybody really care? Does anybody care? Every 20 minutes, somebody dies out here on the highway just because of a drunk. Every 8 minutes, someone's paralyzed for the rest of their life. Every 33 seconds, somebody's going to have an accident just because of a drunk. And we wonder, does anybody really care? So, young people, the next time you're at a party, and someone says, let's really party, please remember 3 things that this old state trooper's fixing to tell you. You never miss your water till the well goes dry. You never miss sunshine till a cloudy day. And you never know what you really have got until it's gone. Young ladies, don't get in a car with a drunk. He'll kill you. I'm in a South Louisiana high school one day, and I made that statement. A little girl came up to me, had a boy's class ring on her finger, had about 10 pounds of tape underneath the bottom. She came up to me and she said, my boyfriend loves me, and just because he drinks when we date doesn't mean he's going to hurt me. I said, darling, if you get in a car with him drinking, he'll hurt you. He walked over, fellas, where we were standing, had his big football leather jacket on, and he put his arm under her hand, pulled her across the gym and said, don't listen to him, he's an idiot. The principal sent me a clipping out of the paper. He killed her in a car wreck, gang. He didn't even go to her funeral, and he married someone else 3 months later. When you party with alcohol, you'll party in a group. But if you die with it, I promise you, you die all alone.